Okay, great. Thank you, Shari. And we prepared a poll to get us started. So I'm going to launch that poll now. And then you should have it there. So go ahead and fill out those questions. Okay, I see results coming in.
Cool.
I think we should give it just another minute or so. I think a few people are still joining. Hmm. Why don't we we'll do about half more minutes. Okay, let's take a look at the results. Okay. So the first question, are you familiar with using the WhatsApp platform? 69% yes. 31%, 5 people say no. Shari, can you see question 2?
Sure, which is, are you familiar with teaching through WhatsApp platform? Only one of you is, that's the 6%, and most of you are not.
Interesting. Okay, number 3. Ooh, wow, 100%. Are you familiar with using the Zoom platform? 100% yes. All right, great. And how about number 4, Shari?
Oh, actually, I lost number 4. Let me get that. Are
Oh,
you familiar?
yeah.
Thanks. With teaching through the Zoom platform? The vast majority, yes. A couple of you, no.
Yeah, and that's really good. I mean, and think about it, about probably a year ago, that number would be a lot lower.
Yeah, definitely.
And number 5, do you use any other online platforms for teaching or tutoring? We have 6 people said yes.
Ooh.
So I'm curious, those 6 people, feel free to share. Can you either via chat or turn your microphone on? Can you tell us what platform you use? Okay, FaceTime, Google Meet, wconline.com, Viber, and D2L, yeah. Google Meet, of course, yeah, Google Meet is very useful. Okay, well, that's really interesting. It's nice to hear that there are other platforms out there, Zoom and Meet. Okay, all right, well, we just wanted to do that poll to get a sense of which platforms everyone has worked with. Okay, so why don't we...
Oh, and the last one, Skype is there too.
Oh, Skype, okay, yeah. So yeah, today we will be talking about platforms and platform functionality. So that was good to get a sense of what everyone has worked with. So today's presentation is nurturing multiple literacies through remote instruction, authentic context, and storytelling. And our workshop goals today are to gain a better understanding of what can be accomplished via remote instruction, apply methods of literacy learning, for example, authentic context and storytelling within a digital format, And finally, to explore different modalities and how they can be utilized in language and literacy learning. Okay, so who are LESLA learners? Literacy education and second language learning for adults. And who are they exactly? I'm sure most and many of you are aware of who these learners are, but for those who are not, or it's also a good reminder for all of us. So, less learners, many are refugees, some have had no formal education, some use a different writing system, they all have a unique migration story, and they all bring in a unique set of skills and life stories. So many times in the past, people have used terms such as non-literate, pre-literate, semi-literate, alphabet literate. And we do view these terms as a deficit perspective. So we are making a conscious choice to try to move away from those terms. So we would like to include this as a preferred terminology, LESA learners, also emergent readers. We encourage people to use these terms as they describe our learner more accurately without compromising the range and diversity of skills and backgrounds that learners bring to the classroom. Like we said, they all have a unique story, a set of skills, and they all have overcome significant adversity. Okay, so digital literacy. Harris and Jacobs define digital literacies as basic digital skills. Could be any number of things. For example, the ability to perform a Google search, the ability to navigate a website. And this ties in with the ability to find and evaluate information, assessing what information is relevant, how do we find the information, how do we determine if this is what we need. Also, the ability to create and communicate in digital contexts. So for example, create a user profile, create a document, send a text message, write an email. And finally, the ability to solve problems in digital contexts. You know, as we all know, working with technology involves a lot of trial and error and being able to adapt. Technology is always changing, so we have to develop a sense of technological autonomy. Almost everything we need to do in life now has to be done digitally in some way, shape, or form. So digital problem solving is a very big part of digital literacy. So along with digital literacy comes digital inclusion and equity. Together, access, devices, and digital literacies comprise digital inclusion. So in order to use technology, you need a device. In order to use a device, you need to have access to the internet. And when you look at social inequalities, everything is interconnected. If families or individuals have financial constraints, they may not have reliable access to the internet, or they may have limited access or no access to a device. And because they don't have reliable access to technology, it's harder for them to secure gainful employment. It's harder to access healthcare. Everything in life is just simply harder when the technology is not accessible. Let me actually go back too. So also the pandemic has brought what's known as the digital divide to the forefront. And as we all know, life has changed dramatically. We were already headed towards a predominantly digital world. We were already there, but the pandemic has really expedited that progression. So people who are already disadvantaged by digital inequalities pre-COVID times, well, we've seen that divide become magnified. And prior to the pandemic, face-to-face learning was the norm for many literacy programs, as many of us know. And that all changed very quickly. And there are many lesser learners out there who want to take classes and improve their skills, but taking classes online is not easy when you don't have a computer or you're limited to perhaps a smartphone. And when you're not accustomed to using a mainstream platform such as Zoom, it's very difficult. So also, finally, looking at these issues through a deficit perspective, we as educators may think or say things like, oh, my learners, they don't have the technology for this, when really we should be saying or thinking, we as educators didn't prepare our learners for this. So how can we communicate with our learners remotely? Um, there are many ways to do this. These are some lines of communication that we have found to work well with lesser learners, especially in tutoring contexts and one-on-one situations or small group configurations. So our primary communication device could be our cell phone. And this configuration is for teachers. We're assuming the learner probably has a smartphone. Um, if they do have a computer or a tablet, that's good, but they might just have a phone, if that. So this is a configuration for teachers. We could use our cell phone, we could use our computer, of course, and we can also use a tablet for primary communication. We also have an option for secondary device, which could be used actually for projection. So if you have some images or Google Slides or something like that, and navigating platform, either WhatsApp or Zoom, is a little too difficult for your learner, you can actually just hold up your secondary device for projection. You know, I could have my Google Slides here and I'm holding them up to the camera. And you know, it doesn't sound ideal, but it actually does work as long as you pay attention to your framing and everything. And then, of course, we can do a lot of things. We can send links, we can send slides, we can send images, videos, recordings, messages, emoji, GIFs, etc. Via chat. And this would be through WhatsApp. And then another platform we can use is Zoom. So why WhatsApp? Well, it is a widely used communication platform used throughout the world. So many learners actually already have WhatsApp. They might be using it to communicate with people back in their home country. It also works very well on smartphones. It's quick and easy to communicate with voice and video calls. It's easy to sync with your phone contacts. So if you get your learner's phone number and you have WhatsApp, you're automatically synced. And there are also many other features, which include text and voice messages, sharing images, emoticons. Really want to stress that WhatsApp has a lot of emoticons that you can use. So if you're looking for images to teach vocabulary, well, WhatsApp has a lot of images that you can send via chat to your learner. You can also send documents, user locations, and other content as well. And another great thing about WhatsApp is we can use it for asynchronous communication. So even if you do go into Zoom and maybe that is the end goal, as Zoom is just so commonly used and a great onboarding tool for learners who are wishing to enroll in classes, you can still use WhatsApp throughout the week in between lessons for a lot of asynchronous communication that you can't necessarily do on Zoom. So we can really utilize both WhatsApp and Zoom in conjunction with this configuration. So here is a visual of the setup that we encourage and that we like to use. So WhatsApp would be the primary platform to begin with, to initiate contact and to get started with your tutoring. And then eventually, as you get comfortable using this, you can work your way into Zoom. You can send a Zoom link via WhatsApp. And as long as the learner has the WhatsApp the Zoom app downloaded, they can access it pretty easily. And then you can utilize all those great tools in Zoom, like sharing screen and all the other features that we know it has. And then beyond that, really the sky is the limit. We could teach learners how to set up a Gmail, how to perform Google searches. And then this picture is just here to signify that with the internet and technology, the world is your oyster. It opens up a lot of opportunities for the learner. So let's discuss our theoretical framework here. This is a multi-literacies approach, which is the move away from traditional views of literacy, which simply include reading and writing. The multi-literacies approach addresses the need for communication through various forms of technology. And this approach can include visual, text, digital, as well as technology literacies. And multi-literacies approach can also be seen through a critical lens. And as Holloway and Guthrow point out, a multi-literacies approach consciously and explicitly engages with cultural diversity, technology, and multimodality. Multi-literacies approach is also learner-centered. So we as teachers should evaluate what the learner already knows and build off of their strengths and needs. And we should tailor instruction to the learner. So go where the learning takes you. What are some interests? What are some skills they need to develop? And we should foster lifelong learning. This is where life skills come into play, getting ready for filling out a job application, accessing healthcare. Also, of course, digital skills, as I talked about. This is all part of fostering lifelong learning. And to finally be attentive to social justice concerns. So I always try to think, well, the learner has a different world than I do. They have a different setup than I do. They may be living at home with their families in a small apartment. Maybe they share a device. They don't have the same internet access that I have. Luckily, I have a quiet and private place where I can teach and I can take classes, and they might not have that same setup that many of us have. Okay, and combining modalities. So what is a modality? According to Strauss and Fays, modality is the medium through which discourse takes place. And a lot of times it's referred to as the channel. So traditionally, modalities would include audio, visual, gestural, spatial, and linguistic modes. And this could be speech, written word, body language, and gestures. But also with technology, we have video chat, calls, texts, emails, social media, etc. The list goes on. And through combining different modalities, we can build community and create space for identity expansion. So in this study, Dr. Arnold was looking at a hybrid classroom situation where there was face-to-face learning as well as online discussion boards. And what she found is that learners were able to communicate via the online discussion board and really expand their identities. They were able to find out more about each other. And this opportunity only came up because of the online discussion board. It was outside of the face-to-face learning. So what we can do is we can take that idea and we can apply it to our situation where we're using WhatsApp or we're using Zoom and we're using a lot of different modalities, giving the learner a lot of opportunities to express themselves. And also, multimodal forms of expression are a big part of the multiliteracies approach, which also embraces linguistic diversity and facilitates multimodal forms of expression to support learning. And multimodal forms of expression can include many things. They can include images, video, audio, gesture, touch, and written text as well. Okay, so what are some multimodal forms of expression? Please join in and participating. You can turn your microphone on and say something, or you could send something in chat. I'm curious to hear what you think. Multimodal forms of expression.
Well, audio recordings.
Audio recordings, yeah. What else?
So sometimes I'll have early ESL students leave audio statements on our WhatsApp group as homework.
Right. So audio statements as homework.
Mhm.
Great.
Also, sometimes I'll ask them to take pictures of road signs that they don't understand and post those on WhatsApp so that we can cover it in class.
Yeah, that's great. Taking pictures. And you can do that too. You can take a picture throughout the week and send it to your learner. Any other ideas on multimodal forms of expression? Okay, well, thanks for sharing. So on the left here, these are more traditional multimodal forms of expression: gestures, acting, pictures, photos, images, singing, songs. And on the right, some multimodal forms of expression that utilize technology. As Amy was saying, audio messages, video messages, texts, emojis, emoticons, GIFs, and memes. And I'm sure there are many more too on this list. I don't think I included everything. So really, we have a lot of opportunities to communicate with our learners.
So Ben has introduced us to some of the ways in which digital technology can be used for remote instruction, as well as those principles of multi-literacies approach. But what about the pedagogy? How has literacy teaching pedagogy been affected by remote learning? You probably have your own ideas already. How do we teach literacies which are so reliant on establishing meaning through mediation and through the intimacy of the shared experience, when unlike in these pictures on your screen, we no longer have shared space or touch? I'm thinking about pointing to demonstrate relevance or intention. What about giving directions when your frame of reference is reversed or obscured? Thinking about writing without touch, etc. And even more poignant for those learners whose English speaking and listening skills are only just emerging. How do we teach language and literacies to literacy learners distantly? That's a big question. Next slide, please. Well, for one, we can facilitate comprehension in more obvious ways. First, you get to know your learner with use an initial session or two for needs assessment. What do they need most? What's most relevant to them as individuals? Then from the start of your lessons, establish distinct gestures when working physically, or icons if you're working with text or pictures that correspond to your particular instructional language. Use the same gestures and the same icons frequently and consistently. And definitely, of course, increase your reliance on gesture, on facial expression, and TPR, total physical response, etc. Here are examples of icons and pictures and maybe corresponding gestures that were easily sourced from the open source resource on the web. Anyone want to guess at the first? First
I don't
icon?
understand.
Sorry?
I don't understand.
Very good, right. Easy. I don't
Yeah.
understand. Right. How about this one?
Good job.
Good job. I got it also. Right. It could be interpreted a couple of ways, maybe.
Yeah.
Down in the left-hand corner, I think, call, watch. This is one I used a lot. Anyone know?
Presenting.
Sorry?
Presenting.
Presenting or show me or right.
Yeah, or show me. Yes.
Right. Exactly. Thanks.
Yeah.
All right. Let's move to the next slide. Thanks. So we know that amplifying our means of facilitating comprehension is important when teaching remotely, but it's also important to increase our attention to authenticity of context or situation. And how do we do that? We use real life contexts, grocery shopping, family, housework, housing, connecting with community, accessing healthcare, and as well as using activities representative of real life situations. Making grocery lists like the one here, maybe a little neater, I don't know. A family chore chart, write a text to a landlord, fill out a vaccination registration form, all of those. Also, make sure to incorporate information that you've gleaned from your initial needs assessment sessions with your learner. Secondly, we can place an emphasis on simulating or recreating a shared reality. This means in real time, use realia from your separated environments. Step away from the computer screen and our projections and enter our multidimensional lives. And the smartphones are terrific for doing this. You can take advantage of them by taking house tours with your learners. Go into the kitchen, touch the same apple or different apples, but your apple in your space, your learner's apple in their space. For hands-on literacy learning, use whiteboards and foam letters for letter manipulation. Again, recreating authenticity. Also, take advantage of technology to augment your connectedness with your learner. For example, again, using the text or chat function on WhatsApp to send personal pictures like we've talked about, or voice messages, from both sides, you and your learner, both inside class and as extracurricular communication and connectedness. Use the participants' reactions buttons on Zoom at the bottom of your screen to demonstrate emotion or interest. And the double benefit, of course, of using technology to do this is that you're teaching digital literacy at the same time as you're continuing to build your connection and your authentic connection with your learner. Any kind of device navigation or app functionality, email, website navigation, incorporating all of these things into your lessons, and your learner is thereby, learning through real and authentic use. Next slide, please. Thanks. So since we're talking about the pedagogy, we need to mention the whole approach to teaching literacy. This is the approach touted by experts in literacy work. The whole approach is based on the understanding that literacy work can't be effectively accomplished without first establishing meaning for the learner. What are letters and numbers but symbols? They need meaning behind them. And, you know, what are sounds, but sounds without meaning or context. So we start with the meaning and the general picture, the global comprehension there above the arrows, context, personal experience, which is also the top processing on the ladder, the top-down processing. So we start there and establish meaning before we go down the ladder, go down the arrows there, and get into the literacy work of the sounds, the letters, the words, and the structures. And then we can go back up again, go up the ladder, back to reestablish meaning, giving the literacy work the meaning for the learners. And we can go back and forth and up and down. But of course, to successfully accomplish this back and forth, you're best to have a framework for meaning. And that's what this next slide brings up. This framework can be established through storytelling or story building. You know, stories are the way we make meaning of our world in general. If you think about scientific theories or religion or societal conventions, stories provide a perfect framework or tool for remote literacy work, for introducing context and for implementing the whole part whole approach. I'm sure you're pretty familiar already with certain readers like Bow Valley, which are tiered and a wonderful free resource for literacy work, but you may not be as familiar with storytelling or story building yourself. What's great about creating your own stories with your learner is that it's pretty easy through Google Slides, or even just a simple Word document and taking pictures from open sources on the web. 2, you can really tailor your story to both your lesson and keeping in mind the importance of learner background knowledge and experience. You can tailor your story to the learner. And finally, you know, this story can become a meaningful keepsake for the learner or used as extracurricular study or review. Tailored stories, they're highly relevant material. They honor the learner's experience, their life, and it builds community between you and your learner in the process. To create a permanent document for sending, you just make a PDF of your document or your slide and you send it to the learner via text or chat in WhatsApp or Zoom. Next slide, please. And let's see, the details of storytelling or story building, depending on learner level or need, or depending on your content, you can choose a simple pictorial format, wordless, or a story with text you can create. You can work from multiple perspectives, depending on learner need or your particular comfort level. You can make this story, you can co-create the story with your learner. The learner can make a story. And of course, you can also use online ready-made stories if they're relevant, or wordless videos you can create great stories from as well. Also, don't forget to use those multiple modalities to personalize and make more salient your experience or your learner's experience. Use your personal pictures, their pictures, your pictures, emojis, GIFs for movement, etc. Music. We provided here a couple of examples, which unfortunately we can't, access using the, I guess it's more efficient to access them right on our slides. These are 2 examples of simple stories or story building that we've drawn from a general curriculum. They're not necessarily personalized to individual learners, but they're good illustrations of the first is a worded story. It's from a lesson on personal information and emergency assistance. And Ben will take us through just briefly a few of the slides, very distinct, pictures, simple wording. This is about Luciana, who obviously needs help. She calls 911. Please help. Reviewing the verbiage necessary. I speak Spanish. An ambulance comes. Help is on the way. And Luciana is now okay. At the end of this lesson, also, you can pull in a real life activity and create an emergency ID card, a wallet card for your learner. The next story, A Story, Your Words, is part of a review lesson of a final curriculum. So the pictures are pulled from multiple past lessons on weather, on place, on foods, etc. A whole curriculum. There are no words here, so the learner can create the entire story. This, like in the language experience approach, in which a shared experience, in this case, the whole curriculum is documented, maybe by you, in this case, the instructor, and then retold by the learner with the instructor documenting the learner's words, correcting for grammar maybe, but truly in the learner's words and documenting the experience. Bye. Thanks, Ben.
Okay, thanks, Shari. And those stories are just a great tool to use, and you can reuse them and retell them in many different ways. Once you work with one story well, it can become a way you can always fall back on that or review it. So you can get a lot out of those story building. And finally, we'd like to just provide some overall online tutoring tips. So on the left, we have a picture of a good tutoring setup. I have my cell phone here, which is my primary communication device. I have a nice marker board with some magnetic foam letters that I can use. And then I have my tablet for secondary projection. So you should utilize marker board and markers, foam letters, and numbers, things that we did use in face-to-face learning. They still work well in an online context. Of course, using Realia is great. And as Shari mentioned out, the house tours are a hit. And you can always you can find so much just in your own home or what's in your surroundings. It's also important to sort out your device and platform configuration. This is a little tricky. It takes a little practice to get used to becoming comfortable with using WhatsApp or Zoom or whatever platform you're using. And do please pay special attention to framing when presenting. Keep in mind that your learner may just be looking at a small picture of you on their phone. So if you're holding up a letter or a picture, you really need to make sure it's framed well. And also use the mail if you want to get some materials to your learner, like letter tracing, some literacy building worksheets. You can actually if you can get their address and send it to them, and that could be part of the lesson, communicating about your address and sending something in the mail. It could be an inspirational way to get them to think about using the mail system. And finally, of course, always be supportive, positive, adaptable, and flexible. And then real quick, here are some literacy building activities that do work very well in an online context. Pictionary is still a hit. We do use a marker board. I'm sure there are some ways to do it digitally, but maybe the marker board just works better. Name the letter and the sound. You could present this to your learner. A, what is it? Apple. Write the first letter. Oh, what goes here? What's here? Banana. That's right. Same or different. CCH, cat, cha, cat. Oh, that's different. Hat, 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 hat. Oh, that's the same. And then activities like bingo still really work well, especially if you've gone on to Zoom and you can share screen. These activities work well and they're easy to create. You can do them in different ways. You could make a Google slide, a Google Doc. You could also use, if you're on Zoom, you could use the annotation tools and create an activity like this on the fly, basically. Okay, so now it's time to break out and we're gonna invite everybody to participate in an activity together. So here is what we would like you to do. Talk with your group and share ideas. Brainstorm activities that you could use in a 30 to 60-minute lesson with 1 to 2 lesson learners through WhatsApp or Zoom. We do want to give you a little bit of freedom. So if you think, oh, this idea works best for Zoom, okay, you can be on Zoom, but do think of those 2 platforms. Imagine the learners are learning the letters and they can speak in simple, full sentences. Try to think of authentic contexts and activities. And these are some themes that we'd like you to work with. So one group will do food, one group grocery shopping, one group weather, home, housework, community, town, etc. Do incorporate elements of the whole part whole method and try to weave some aspect of storytelling into your lesson, and think of ways to facilitate multimodal forms of expression, both synchronously and asynchronously. Yeah, do we have a question, Davida?
Yeah, I was just wondering how many students can be on WhatsApp at a time? Like, can you have a big group video chat? I've only ever used it with one-on-one.
That's a good question. We actually experimented with that, not with learners, but with ourselves, just to see. And we got, I think, 5 people into a WhatsApp video call, but I think anything beyond that would be just too difficult and you wouldn't be able to see everybody.
But what is nice, sorry, just a little insert there, is that even with 5 people on, you can still like tap on the person that you want to really pay attention to and have their whole image or their image take the whole screen up. In other words, that a learner can just be seeing you if that's desired. That's kind of neat.
So I have a question before you put us in breakout rooms. Can you each share a successful lesson situation that you've experienced working with a literacy student? Because there's a lot of wonderful ideas here, but I have a sense that maybe what one can actually do in an hour is pretty is pretty contained. And so if you can each give us an example.
Ooh, that's a good question.
There's a lot of great stuff here. This is very, very rich. But
Sorry, Gail, go ahead.
But I know you, because I know you've been working with one of our emerging literacy students and have developed a lot of great things. But if you imagine that you're working with that student and you're imagining what a day started with that student, how it kind of unfolded. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I can think of a good example of, we were talking about food, of course, and grocery shopping and things like that. And so I created a short video showing my groceries and what I bought at the store that day. And I sent it to the learner. And she replied with an audio recording that she made herself on WhatsApp saying, oh, thank you. And I basically just describing in her own words what she saw. And then she talked about her day and she talked about, cooking and doing various things. and it was very simple language, but it was very meaningful, and that exchange happened. It had a lot to do with doing using the realia within our tutoring sessions too. You know, showing her, oh, this is my kitchen, this is my refrigerator, I have this, I have that. So that was a good.
And it's an exchange. It's not artificial. It's like you're sharing a piece and then she gets to share a piece and respond, and you have a conversation. Thank you.
Yeah.
And I have to say, for me, it was very similar. It all started with the house tour, the day of stepping away from the projection and into the house. It was like, whoa, the animation level just in a person who's already animated, but you know, skyrocketed. Very, very authentic, real. Thanks.
Thank you.
I have a question about just the mechanics of walking around your house with the cell phone. Isn't that sort of, you know, dizzy inducing for the person that who's watching your phone or watching it on their phone?
I mean, that's a good question, because I sometimes get dizzy indeed, but you know, the amount of movement can be controlled. It's maybe just going from one room to another, and then you're there, and then you slowly can turn it, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That didn't seem to come up as a problem.
Okay.
Okay, yeah. Are there any other questions? We will leave some room at the end for some Q&A and discussion, but we would like to hear some of your ideas and get you collaborating together. So why don't we get going with those breakout rooms? So any questions about what you'll be doing in breakout rooms? Okay, well, I'm gonna stop sharing and I'm gonna set these up real quick. I think we should do 4 rooms. And let's just, okay, so let's have group 1. We can do the old familiar food, grocery shopping, etc. Group 2. What would be group 2? Sorry, I lost my notes.
Sorry. Well, we could do family, or we could do, let's see, what was on there?
We have
Oh,
weather.
weather.
We talk about weather.
Thank you. Weather. We could do family.
We could do community.
And then, yeah, and then group 4 could be community, places, etc. And then we do have a lesson plan template, but of course you don't have to use this, but it's just something if you're having trouble getting going, thinking of ideas together. And I'm going to send that to you in the chat. And this is a Google Doc that everybody can share together. So hopefully you can open that. And that's just for ideas. You can make notes on your own piece of paper, whatever you want to do.
Really just to get an exchange of ideas going and brainstorm.
So are people able to open that Google Doc?
Yes.
Okay, cool. All right, I think we should do about 10 minutes. So as we are running out of time and we want to leave some time at the end. So we'll get you in those breakout rooms, and Shari and I will be floating to answer any questions if you have any. Okay, hi everybody, welcome back. Thank you so much for participating in that discussion. We know it probably wasn't enough time to fully develop all your ideas, but let's do a quick share. Can somebody from group 1 just share 1 or 2 ideas or what you talked about, or even maybe even some difficulties that came up, or whatever you want to share.
What was that, food? Was that-
Yeah, food group. Yeah, go ahead, Nicola.
Okay, so we had a little difficulty because most people are used to working with a bit more advanced students than what the description that you gave us. But we came up with the idea of for food like having so really Aliyah having a bowl with various fruits in it. One person suggested we could if we're looking at sounds, you know, which food starts with a B or like a B. And then for vocabulary, if the person is at that level, we were thinking you could identify what the foods are, so to learn it, and we could have sentence frames like this is a or an, and you know, you banana, whatever. Oh, before we got to that, we thought we could warm up with this song, I like to eat apples and bananas. It's kind of kiddie, but I think it's fun. And if we found an image that has the fruits labeled as we, you know, as the song goes or so, that would be good. Right, so then identifying this is whatever, and then talking about like which one you like, I like, and modeling I like apples, or my favorite fruit is, yeah, that's kind of as far as we got. Oh, we also talked about like grocery shopping, you know, either in the store at like a farmer's market and having to say, I would like some, yeah, that's as far as we got.
Those are great ideas. I love the fruit bowl idea. And it sounded like you had enough ideas to probably plan 2 or 3 lessons, I think. How about group 2? Anyone from group 2 want to share something?
Is that me and Margarita Hunter, or?
Well, you're group 3, so actually no, not yet, but group 2 would be Amy, Davida, Gail, Laura.
So we were weather, we talked about going outside and, you know, showing what the weather is now, comparing weather forecasts for different cities, looking at weather maps, dressing up, you know, put on hat and scarf and what's the weather. Let's see, then we got diverted into good resources for coming up with materials. So.
Nice. Okay, great. How about group 3, Laura? You go ahead.
Yeah, I somehow didn't hear that our topic was weather, so I kind of launched off into something else. And Margarita can mention some of her ideas, but I brought up the fact that I am using the WhatsApp with the people on Taurus, if you know that provider, Ramin. And we talked about having pictures of parks, you know, maybe no matter where they are, whether they're overseas or they're right here in the metro area, we could have some pictures and have them, if they're close, they could go out and get some information, take pictures, come back, we talk about it, and we can always send on WhatsApp, you know, the document about what park that is and so on and so forth. Margarita, maybe you want to say something?
Yeah, so I have never used WhatsApp for teaching at all. I mostly do Zoom and Google Slides, but I had thought about, since we were doing weather, that we would try to find different resources for students so that they could know where to go when they want to know about the weather. And then, so like take a picture of your phone, because everybody has a phone and you see all the different weather for all the different cities across the United States. And then put that in a Google slide Or another resource would have been use a newspaper. The newspaper has a picture, it has all kinds of information. And then using icons for hurricane, flash flood, those kinds of things, and talking about that with the kids or adults. So that's kind of where we get started. And then we kind of went off on a tangent because we have a mutual friend in teaching. But anyway, so that's kind of where we went. We didn't, but I love the idea of having a song to teach kids weather or students about weather, but we didn't quite get that far.
All right, thanks for sharing.
Mhm.
And then anyone from group 4? Adriana, Lisa. Yeah, okay. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, we talk about possible, our topic was community, about possibly have like a image, or if we did a presentation, with Google Slides with the image of maybe like a small map of a city where it has, like a plaza, the church, the school, the hospital, all the, things together, and then go more specific about in each slides about talking the school, having the vocabulary, and maybe we can talk a little bit about near and far or close, or, transportation, some of the things that will be around that community. And then I show a little bit of the WhatsApp app, that it has a nice, emojis that you can use for, different things, even if it's food, or, they also have places, they have hospital, they have a lot of images that you can share and have a conversation, having the, you can have the video at the same time that do the chatting and share some of those images too, for language, for learning vocabulary about the places of the community. Anything else, Lisa? And
I think you covered it. We talked. I mean, we did do a fair amount of WhatsApp because Adriana's more familiar with it, so she was helping us get more familiar with it, which was great.
Okay, great. Well, thanks for sharing. You all came up with such great ideas, and it was a great chance for you to start thinking about how you could plan a lesson like that. Okay, well, we're actually at the end of the workshop time, but are there any other questions that anyone would like to ask?
I have one. So the curriculum that you just shared in the chat, Ben, is this the one that Shari and you created as part of your project?
Yes, yeah, we created it in our PSU curriculum design class with 2 other students, and I think there are, is it 16 lessons with very detailed lesson plans and Google Slides to go along with each lesson.
It's wonderful. I just perused the slides and the overview. Thank you for being so generous and sharing it with us.
Sure. Also included our PowerPoint from today. So if anyone's interested in looking at that or at the resources too, we do have a resource page, including the Arnold study that I referenced in our presentation. Yeah, does anyone else have any questions?
I just want to say thanks for all the great material.
Yeah,
yeah,
thank you.
Really appreciate it.
Sure.
There's a lot to absorb. So,
Yeah.
in a good way.
Did somebody else have their hand raised? I think Michelle, did you have a question? Oh, okay, you're good. Okay. Well, just as a final thought, we do realize that things are changing very rapidly, And we will be going back to face-to-face learning at some point very soon, hopefully in the future. But we also feel that a lot of this work that we've all been doing and that we've all been learning about teaching through WhatsApp and teaching through Zoom, that really can be utilized in hybrid settings. And what we've also found too is that there are a lot of learners who maybe they can't come to campus for a weekly literacy class, or maybe online learning is more convenient for them. So I think we can utilize what we've learned through this pandemic as we move ahead into the future.
Yeah.
All right, well, thanks everyone. Thank you for coming.
You.
Thank you so much.